What's up, guys? My name is Jonathan. I'm the host here at the VenueRx podcast, but some of you may not know I'm also the owner of a company called Common Sense Events. Common Sense Events is a venue management company located here in Southern California, and we manage multiple wedding and event properties. We do millions of dollars a year in wedding sales, and I'm excited to start creating some more content around the lessons that we've learned, some of the wins we've had, some of the failures we've had, and maybe even give you a little bit of an inside scoop as to, what we're doing, how we're doing with hiring, what we're doing as far as sales, meetings and teams, and kind of all of the back end stuff that we're doing as far as the properties that we manage and how we're growing as a company. So part of this for me is just documenting the journey and chronicling some of the failures we've had, but also some of the wins. And I'm hoping that this content is going to be relevant and good for you if you're thinking about starting a venue, or maybe even if you have a venue but you want to kind of compare it against something that someone else is doing. So without further ado, let's jump into the topic of today's show, I guess is really what it is. But before we do, I want to say if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. We're trying to grow this channel, and it would really mean a lot to me if you were subscribed. Anyway, let's get to it.
You're listening to the VenueRx podcast.
The topic for today is a three-step, I guess I could say, system that switched around how we do our venue tours and actually resulted in us doing so much more in sales than we had ever done before. So previously we did, 5-6 bookings a month. And I think we were still getting a lot of the stuff dialed in a lot of the different properties, but we had a specific month I can remember, where we had this venue manager meeting. Everyone was sitting around. We had the venue managers, the sales managers there, and we were sharing. Everyone was going around and sharing what was working for them at each one of the properties, and on the tour specifically, what was working. And something stood out to me. We had one team member, she was kind of quiet, and she kind of sheepishly sticks her hand up and she says, I don't know if this is right or whatever, but I don't really spend a lot of time talking about the property. I actually spend a lot of time just like chatting with the couple. In fact, I kind of let them just take me wherever they want to go around the property, and then I answer whatever questions they have. And at first glance, I was like, this sounds chaotic and like a disaster. But I went back and looked later, actually, after we had the meeting, and she was doing the best out of every single manager and out of every single property. That property that she was managing was doing the best. And so we looked into this a little bit more. We started talking about it. We talked with our, the couple people that help kind of run everything, director of operations and things like that. And what we realized was this specific individual had stumbled upon something that was going to be a game changer for a lot of our properties. And so that is the framework for what we're going to be talking about here today. What this sales manager was doing is just spending a lot of time asking questions. And that's the first point here. If I could leave you with any takeaways, there's going to be 3, and maybe I'll even throw in a 4th bonus one. But the number one thing that she was doing that was making a huge difference was she was asking questions. And she wasn't asking questions like, how many guests are you going to have? And, okay, do you have your catering picked out? Have you picked out any of your other vendors? No, she wasn't saying that. She was saying, what's important to you? Why are you doing this wedding? Are you doing a big thing? Do you want to do a small thing? Where did you get engaged? What stuff are you passionate about? Where did you go to school? What do you do for work? She was actually trying to get to know these couples, and it made such a difference because how they viewed her completely changed. That is point number 2. Develop rapport. But you don't develop rapport by being salesy or trying to be fake or trying to, take interest in something they take interest in because you have heard somewhere that is like going to help you sell more. No, not at all. You develop rapport by getting them to trust you, and you develop rapport by asking those questions so that you can find things you have in common. Because when you have something in common with someone, you share a passion. I don't know, if you're listening to me right now, you probably are passionate about weddings. You're probably passionate about your property, or maybe owning a property one day, or managing a property one day. If that's you, we have something in common, right? We share that passion. And so immediately it builds kind of this trust factor that I think is really, really important and crucial when selling this $3,000 to $6,000 to $8,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 package that we're doing in some cases for blank canvas, and much, much more when you think of adding in bar and catering and all that other stuff. So you really have to spend some time getting to know this person and not just kind of the details that they can fill out on the inquiry form. You got to go deeper than that. So those two things, first was asking questions, second, developing rapport. And one thing I want to go back and note really quick about the asking questions, she wasn't just going around the property and showing them the list of features that were available to them on the website. No, she was spending time asking those questions and not talking about the property, and kind of let the couple decide and tell her what was most important. And then she spent time talking about the things that they were interested in. So, if it was the water features, or if it was great photo opportunities, or if it was the getting ready room or whatever, that's where this specific venue manager would spend more time. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant and a huge game changer. Now, the third point that I'm going to say here is use empathy when you're talking to your couples. And you got to understand it's a huge expense, and there are a lot of options on the market. And they're also probably being hit up quite a bit in this whole wedding process from all the vendors that they're working with. They're thinking about all these different things, and then they have people in their lives now who probably weren't in their lives before, who are giving them this different advice about what they think that they should do. And so it's really important as a salesperson to not just develop that rapport and help them make a decision, hopefully a decision at your property, but it's also important for you to have a really, really good understanding of your local market, so that when you talk to this couple and talk to your couples as a whole, you're able to be a consultant to them, not a salesperson. And I think this is absolutely huge, and this is something we talk about a lot here at Common Sense Events, is like, you can't just go out and say, this is what I would do. This is, you should get married here at this property. You're going to love this. No, you've got to ask those questions so that you can understand what they're looking for. And then you need to have an awareness of the other properties in the area. And you have to assume that they're going and touring other properties. And you got to say, hey, look, you said you were interested in a plated dinner. We have such a good flow for how your guests will be set up and how the caterer will be able to be set up here. And, it will just really fit in well with the vision that you have for the property. And, where else are you touring? And they might list off a couple of names, and you might say, oh my gosh, I love that property. It's so beautiful. But the one thing you're going to want to look out for is this might not match up with what I was, hearing you say before. Now all of a sudden you're bringing in these reference points of things they said, and they don't feel like they have to kind of like be on their best behavior and not mention the fact that they're going and touring other venues. Like, they get to have this real conversation with you, and I think that's so valuable. So that's that last point. Those three things have made an absolute huge difference. It's resulted in us doing over $150,000 a month for the last couple months, and it's been really a game changer. And so I hope some of this can work for you, and you're able to book more weddings as well. I want to leave you with one final thing, and this topic needs an entire video of it in and of itself. But the last little pro tip is to follow up. We talked about how loud everything gets for these couples as far as planning, and all the people in their heads and in their ears, telling them what they should do, or what the best advice they got, and they probably are reading blogs and on Wedding Wire and The Knot and all these different places. But it's really important to understand that you have to make your venue the most important thing. It has to be the most important thing to you. You can't hide behind this feeling of, oh, I don't want to bug them. Like, they have so many different things going on in their life. You have to be able to be there, be present for them even after they leave. And that means texting them, emailing them, calling them, doing all these different things with the understanding that they are getting a barrage of ads and information, and you have to cut through that. If you don't cut through that, you are doing them a disservice if you truly feel like your venue will be the best place for them to have their wedding. So I want to encourage you, if you're struggling with this and you're not following up a ton because you feel like, oh, I don't want to bug them, I don't want to be pushy, develop a process or develop some touch point that you can have regularly with them, that you can share maybe updates on the property. You can share some date availability stuff. You can, find reasons, find excuses to reach out to them and touch base. And if you've developed some rapport, and if you've asked those questions that have developed some things that maybe you have in common, or other things that you can bring back and circle back around on, that will make the follow-up process so much easier, so much more natural. And now you're keeping the conversation going, or you're at least reaching back out to them, because the follow-up process for us, we used to follow up 4, 5, 6 times maybe, but once we switch that to following up, we won't stop following up until we followed up over 20 times. actually. And I know that sounds like a lot. If you're listening to that right now, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot. It does feel like a lot, but it doesn't feel like a lot to the person who has hundreds of other notifications and, things on their schedule and people talking to them and all of that. Most of it gets lost. And it's the few messages that we do have that cut through that need to be able to serve our clients. So I hope this information has been helpful. If you feel like over 20 times is too much to follow up, let me know in the comments. And I'd also love to hear from you. If you have done wedding tours or venue tours, what's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? And kind of some of those things. I'd love to talk about that and maybe even address some questions or anything that comes up. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited about creating this content. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.